If you smell what The Rock is cooking. The Rock says, The Rock says, The Rock says, The Rock.
Hello and welcome to a very special edition of the WWE Wrestling Talk Show with voice for Rock Jones and
Sean Randy Smith as we celebrate 25 years of Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson.
yes, on the 17th of November 1996, that year's Survivor Series, a little known superstar with the name Rocky Maivia would make his first appearance as a match in WWE. Of course, the grandson of Rocky Maivia and the grandson of High Chief Peter Maivia and the son of Rocky Johnson, hence the name Rocky Maivia, would make his England debut. How little people knew what the man would become.
So let's start off with his debut. It was in 1996.
Yes, he just so happened to be on a Survivor Series elimination match of Survivor Series that year. Speaking of Survivor Series, cheap plug, pre-show coming tomorrow. In this match, he was on a team with Jake the Snake Roberts, Mark Malero, and the Stalker. Not a great name.
No, not at all.
However, he did prove to be the lone survivor, because in that match, Jerry the King Lawler would be eliminated by Jake Roberts. The Stalker would then be eliminated by Goldust.
Yes.
Hunter Hearst Helmsley will be mentioning that name quite a few times, and as we take a trip down memory lane,
Yes.
would be eliminated by Mark Malero. Mark Malero would then be eliminated by Crash, as would Jake Roberts, leaving Rocky Maivia to deal with Crash and Goldust, and he would be able to eliminate them both. Now, Rocky Maivia would receive a mega push after first coming onto WWE TV and be given the name the Blue Chipper, nickname I should say. And within a couple of months of his debut, 3 to be exact, would defeat Hunter Hearst Helmsley, aka Triple H, to win his first championship, being the Intercontinental Championship.
He had his first WrestleMania match at WrestleMania 13, where he was victorious against the Sultan.
Yes, however, this is where things kind of started to go downhill. Because the fans rejected the character of The Rock.
Of Rocky Maivia.
And he would get chance of Die Rocky Die and Rocky Sucks chance. In other words, even back then, the fans did not like a smiling baby face being shoved down their throats.
Yes.
It was only when he would finally lose the Intercontinental Championship and pick up a knee injury, which forced him to take some time off and then come back as a heel as part of the Nation of Domination, where the fans would start to accept him. Kind of like someone else we know who just so happens to be from the same family, Roman Reigns.
Yes. So that would be the Rock's first time in a faction.
Yes, and the Nation of Domination at the time was led up by Farouk with D'Lo Brown, Karma, and Karma. However, it was also around this time where he refused to be known as Rocky Maivia and would change his name to The Rock and has not looked back since.
The rest, as they say, is history.
Now, The Rock would attempt to regain the Intercontinental Championship in a short feud with Stone Cold Steve Austin. Again, we'll mention his name quite a bit during this show.
Yes.
First D-Generation X in your house. But then, shortly after Austin won the championship in 1997, he would hand the championship over to The Rock, as Austin would set his sights on the WWE Championship at the time.
Yes.
Then The Rock would enter a feud really with Ken Shamrock.
The world's most dangerous man.
And have an Intercontinental Championship program with him that would lead through to WrestleMania 14. Then, unfortunately, after losing the Intercontinental Championship, or even during his reign, the Nation of Domination would ultimately turn on Farouk, and The Rock would become the leader.
Yes.
But also during this time, the Nation of Domination would ultimately turn on The Rock, and The Rock would become kind of a babyface or lone heel, and we would go into the Deadly Games tournament of Survivor Series 1998 of the WWE Championship.
So the finals match were The Rock Mankind, who at the time was Vince McMahon's associate.
Or so we thought. However, we would kind of get a repeat of the year before with a Montreal screw job,
With something that we like to call the corporate screw job.
in which Mankind was screwed out of the WWE Championship. Now, in between Survivor Series and WrestleMania, The Rock and Mankind would several times trade the WWE Championship back and forth.
Including in a very now famous empty arena match during halftime heat.
And the famous for going maybe a tad too far, I Quit match at the Royal Rumble.
Yes. 20-something chair shots.
However, the ultimate match was for The Rock to go one-on-one with Stone Cold Steve Austin at WrestleMania 15, one of 3 matches that the pair would have at WrestleMania. At this point, Rock's popularity was so high that the company had no choice but to turn him face, something that they would love to do these days.
Yes.
So after losing the WWE Championship to Stone Cold, and then losing the rematch at Backlash, Rock would be kicked out of the corporation by Shane McMahon. And this is kind of where things got a little bit weird.
Oh yeah.
Because during the summer period of 1999, The Rock would take a slight break from challenging for the WWE Championship and instead focus on the tag team titles with former enemy Mankind.
And together they would form a tag team known as the Rock and Sock Connection.
Yes. And the Rock and Sock Connection at several times, even though they were very short range, would win the tag team titles together.
Yes.
By defeating Undertaker and Big Show on 2 occasions, and the New Age Outlaws? Or is it
Yes. They'd win the title for the third time on beating the New Age Outlaws on October 14th, 1999 episode of SmackDown, before losing the titles on October the 18th to the Holly cousins of Hardcore Holly and Crash Holly.
Now, after the third reign, the team of Rock and Sock Connection would break up and The Rock would again focus on the WWE Championship. However, things got a little bit more complicated with that situation because during this period we had Triple H as champion, Stone Cold Steve Austin, who had been screwed out of the title, wanting the shot, and Vince McMahon involved.
Yes.
This was supposed to lead to a triple threat match at Survivor Series between the 3. But someone decided it would be a good idea to do attempted murder.
Oh yes, when Stone Cold got run down by Rikishi.
I was gonna save that for the next year.
Oh, true.
So then the Big Show would to be his substitute and win the title. The Rock and the Big Show would enter a mini feud, which really culminated at the 2000 Royal Rumble, which kind of ended controversially. The Rock is declared the winner, but on highlight packages, it kind of shows that The Rock's feet hit first.
But the referees didn't see it.
At No Way Out, Big Show and The Rock had a match to decide who would get the match at WrestleMania. But then we had the weird Fatal 4-Way elimination match at WrestleMania with a McMahon in each corner.
Yeah, so in one corner we had Triple H with his wife Stephanie, Linda McMahon had Mick Foley in her corner, and Vince had The Rock, while Big Show had Shane.
This match should have been a one-on-one match between Triple H and The Rock. And then kind of also could have been just a left the match as is and had The Rock win. The Rock was screwed out of this match by Vince McMahon, not for the first time.
No.
Except he would win a rematch at Backlash with a little bit of assistance from Stone Cold.
Yep.
Triple H would win the championship back in an Iron Man match at Judgment Day with Shawn Michaels as the referee and a new look Undertaker.
Yes.
Getting involved. That would then lead to the complicated match at King of the Ring, in which we had a 6-man tag team match with The Rock teaming up with the Brothers of Destruction to face Shane McMahon, Vince McMahon, and Triple H, with the stipulation that if any one of Undertaker, Kane, and The Rock pinned Triple H, Shane, or Vince, that person would become WWE Champion.
Yes, which The Rock mentioned.
Would ultimately do and hold the title for the next 4 months.
Now we're going to move over to 2001.
Yes, at the later part of 2000, having had successful title defenses against Chris Benoit,
Murderer.
Kurt Angle, Triple H, Kane, and Undertaker, all in various style of matches. Mick Foley, Mankind, who had gone from wrestler to commissioner,
Yes.
would reveal the identity of the person who had run over Stone Cold Steve Austin a year earlier.
As we said, turned out to be Rikishi.
And he did it for The Rock. So he said.
Yeah, I remember that line. Good almighty.
Then The Rock, Rikishi would ultimately cost the Rock the WWE Championship to Kurt Angle. They would have a mini family program at Survivor Series and would both be in the 6-man Hell in a Cell match at Armageddon.
Yeah.
And then we go to 2001.
This is where things get crazy. Very crazy.
The Rock was able to regain the WWE Championship from Kurt Angle at No Way Out, setting up a situation where Houston we had a problem because Stone Cold Steve Austin had won the Royal Rumble match, giving him the main event shot at WrestleMania. Now, what do you do when you have two fan favorites in a match?
What do you do?
Oh, yes, that's right. You think it's a wonderful idea to turn one of them heel in his hometown.
Yes.
This was mainly done so that Rock could take some time off to start what would ultimately become a very successful movie career.
While doing a little known movie called The Scorpion King.
Well, the Mummy Returns first.
Yes.
Then, of course, halfway through, halfway through it to the invasion angle, The Rock would come back, have a program with Booker T and Shane McMahon over the WCW Championship.
Yes.
Then he would go into a program with Chris Jericho over the same championship, and in the middle of all of this, the two would become WWE Tag Team Champions for all of a couple of days.
Yes.
Of course, this would ultimately lead to the winner takes all match at Survivor Series, which ended with a title to the face by Kurt Angle and Austin, Rock Bottom 1, 2, 3.
For WWE to make the purchase of WCW and putting ECW out of business.
Then we go to the night that he has not stopped talking about in 20 years, in which Chris Jericho defeated Rock and Austin in the same night to become the first undisputed WWE champion.
Yes.
Now, at this point in 2002, The Rock started to become a target of a little-known WCW faction called the NWO.
Yes, the NWO made their intentions clear by attacking The Rock with a hammer to the back of the head and even destroying the ambulance that The Rock was inside of.
Yes, this was all built into a match of WrestleMania 18 between Rock and Hogan. Now, initially, going into this match, Rock was the face and Hogan was the heel. However, being the in-ring general really that Rock is, and Hogan, I'll give him credit because he probably heard it as well. Halfway through the match, they started to cheer Hogan and boo Rock, so they decided to flip it and The Rock would start to wrestle him heel.
Yes.
And immediately after the match, which by the way Rock won, they turned Hogan face by having the NWO attack him.
Yes. Then
After WrestleMania 18, The Rock took a bit of time off to film the Scorpion King. However, due to Stone Cold Steve Austin walking out of WWE, was probably brought back sooner than he was going to be at the King of the Ring 2002. Then he was put into a program with Kurt Angle and The Undertaker at Vengeance in a triple threat match over the WWE Championship. In what, at the time at least, I would call one of the best triple threat matches in the company's history.
And during the triple threat match, The Rock would win the Undisputed Championship.
And at the time, he would become the first and only 7-time WWE Champion.
But then at SummerSlam, in comes a young up-and-coming superstar by the name of
Brock Lesnar.
And Lesnar pretty much went, "Hello, Rock at SummerSlam. F5, 1, 2, 3.
Yes, and it was no secret, partly because of the internet here, that this match at SummerSlam was going to be The Rock's more or less last match, and he was going off to do a few more things in Hollywood. So after SummerSlam went off the air, The Rock kind of turned heel and cut the heel promo on the crowd. Now, The Rock would not be seen on WWE TV again until early 2003.
January 30th, 2003.
Yes, which would ultimately lead to a rematch between The Rock and Hulk Hogan at No Way Out. Now this time, it was The Rock who was using the Hollywood name, and there was no doubt who the heel was going to be. However, the result was still the same, with The Rock coming out on top with a little bit of help from Vince McMahon.
Yes. The Rock during this time would also have little mini feuds as well, including one with the Hurricane.
Well, that match with the Hurricane was going into a big program with Austin at WrestleMania 19, which would be their third encounter with WrestleMania, but probably more importantly, Austin's last match.
With The Rock coming up as the victory, as the winner of the match.
Now, going from this match at after WrestleMania, The Rock would, let's just say, meet a little thing called a spear from Goldberg.
Yeah. Let's just say The Rock got speared in half during one of his own concerts.
So Austin's appreciation, right? This would then lead to a Goldberg Rock match, which in 2003 wasn't half bad. If they did that match now, then it would probably be botched everywhere.
So after this match, The Rock lost, but then he would leave WWE to film Walking Tall.
And he would throughout 2003 make the odd appearance here and there, specifically when Mick Foley needed a bit of backup with La Resistance.
La Resistance, and he would also have another WrestleMania match, tag team match between, handicap match between Ric Flair, Orton, and Batista.
Yes, Mick Foley was having a few problems with Evolution, specifically Randy Orton, and The Rock would come back and they would briefly reunite the Rock and Shock connection.
In what would be a, unfortunately, losing effort.
Yeah, this was The Rock's last match in 7 years. 7.5 years. But in between 2004 and 2011, he did make a few sporadic appearances, starting with 2007. They did a taped segment of him during the battle of the billionaires between Vince McMahon and President Donald Trump.
Former President Donald Trump, but okay. Also appear on March 29, 2008 to induct his father and grandfather into the Hall of Fame.
Yes, and then in February of 2011, WWE would announce a host of WrestleMania 27.
And this is where my copy will have a memory flashback.
And we had kind of had a clue because the Titantron started showing electricity. And the most electrifying man in entertainment would ultimately come back through the ring.
After almost 7 years of being away.
Then we would have a little bit of a clue as to what was coming.
Yes.
Because during his return promo, The Rock would call out John Cena. During this time point as well, John Cena was scheduled to face The Miz for the WWE Championship at WrestleMania. In a match which ended by countout.
Yes, and then The Rock would come out and restart the match.
Yes, only to hit John Cena with a rock bottom, allowing The Miz to retain the championship.
Thus setting up a match between...
It was the first time that the main event of WrestleMania had been set up a year in advance. Now, in between this, we go to Survivor Series. John Cena had a budding issue with the Awesome Truth at the time, and was looking for a tag team partner. He asked The Rock to be his tag team partner, which The Rock would say absolutely not. But then he would listen to the people.
A team up with John Cena in the tagline, never say, well, never before,
Never again. Yes, but taglines don't mean anything. I mean, the tagline for the main event of WrestleMania 28 was once in a lifetime. That turned into twice in a lifetime, which we'll get to.
Yeah.
Also, I think after the once in a lifetime main event of WrestleMania 28, which was a good match. John Cena made the mistake of attempting to go for the People's Elbow.
Yeah, big mistake there, John.
To be caught into a rock bottom, which would ultimately lose him the match. The Rock would then, the next night on Raw, basically reveal that he will be at some point again WWE Champion. Now, then we fast forward to the 1000th episode of Raw in 2012. Daniel Bryan has just been stood up by AJ Lee.
In that wedding segment.
And is having a go at CM Punk and saying not only am I better than you, but I'm the greatest WWE superstar of all time. Prompting The Rock to come out, who is known as the Great One. And it's at this point that he informs the WWE crowd and CM Punk that he will challenge for the WWE Championship at the Royal Rumble in 2013.
Yes.
And then, of course, in a WWE Championship match, which John Cena decided it was a good idea to give CM Punk notice with a Money in the Bank contract. That's not the point of the contract. Although we could say the same thing about current champion.
when unfortunately the Big Show coming out and wanting the match with The Rock would come down and make the save. Be blindsided by CM Punk.
Yeah, CM Punk would then turn heel in this night, ultimately setting up the match for the Royal Rumble.
In which?
Now, Vince McMahon got involved in this storyline.
Yes.
And made the stipulation that if CM Punk was counted out or disqualified, that The Rock would lose the championship. Now, it was at this point that we kind of got The Rock and his cousin
in Roman Reigns
in the same place, because towards the end of this match, the lights would go out, and what we believed to be the Shield, though it's never really been confirmed, would chip a powerbomb for Rock through the announce table.
Lights would come up, and obviously we said The Rock was through the table.
So the referee then counts out The Rock. Vince McMahon comes out and says, "We told you if the Shield got involved, they would strip you of a championship." And then he's like, "Yeah, technically we can see the Shield, so that means we're all stripped. It wasn't the Shield." And he's about to strip him of a championship when The Rock goes, "You don't take it from him. I do."
And Vince restarts the match.
And we basically get Punk attempting to do a GTS, counted into the People's Elbow, 1, 2, 3, for the 8th time, 10th overall. The Rock is WWE Champion.
After 10 years.
And sets up Once in a Lifetime, Part 2. Now, during this WWE Championship match at WrestleMania 29, things got a bit complicated for The Rock's acting career.
It did get a little bit hectic.
Because The Rock, part of the reason that especially after this incident, that some people will not insure him when he decides to go back to WWE, is the risk of injury. And in this match of John Cena, which was predictable by the way,
yeah, it was.
The Rock got injured, which I believe delayed the filming of, I believe it was Hercules at the time.
Yeah, something like that.
And then let's fast forward a year. So John Cena would get his win back and his 13th WWE Championship. So we fast forward a year, and then we get Hulk Hogan, Stone Cold Steve Austin, and The Rock in the same ring at the same time to kick off WrestleMania 30.
And even though the Hulk Hogan mispronounced the name of the stadium, it was still a fantastic sight.
Jumping forward another year, The Rock was in the ring during WrestleMania 31 with Triple H and Stephanie. Stephanie decided it would be a good idea to slap The Rock, and it would be like, "What are you gonna do? Hit me?" And then he goes outside the ring, looks at someone, and basically says, "The Rock would never hit a woman, but I have a very good friend who would be happy to." That friend being Ronda Rousey. And I believe this was done just after they'd filmed one of the Fast and Furious films together.
Yeah.
And probably the initial idea for Ronda Rousey's match a couple of years later at WrestleMania 34.
Unfortunately, that didn't happen because they changed The Rock with Kurt Angle.
Then we would go to WrestleMania 32, which was kind of, at the moment at least, The Rock's last match when he would face Eric Rowan and beat him in a couple of seconds. Nothing to do about that.
Also then made no televised appearance after the Raw broadcast went off the air in 2017, and he promoted and filmed a scene for his upcoming film, Fighting with My Family.
Yes, and then he would also make a few appearances, including SmackDown's debut episode on Fox when he and Becky Lynch would beat up Baron Corbin. Sorry, I mean King Corbin. I mean Burger King.
Where The Rock would say one of my colleagues' favourite quotes.
Which one? That promo is for. The
Virgin at Comic-Con.
Yeah, just because you won King of the Ring doesn't make you an extra king, and it doesn't make you dressing up like a 30 one on the Comic Con.
But in August 13th, 2019, The Rock officially announced his retirement from professional wrestling.
I highly doubt that's true, especially if they want to do something with him and Roman Reigns. And then, of course, in a video package, he betrayed WWE by doing a video package with Ken Shamrock into the Impact Hall of Fame
last year.
So, this was a special show with us going over the highlights of 25 years since The Rock / Dwayne Johnson made his first appearance inside a WWE ring. We hope you enjoy listening to this little trip down memory lane.
We will see you tomorrow for our Survivor Series show.
Until then, he's been
Sean Randy Smith, and he's been
Mr. Rock Jones, and if you smell, well, we've been cooking for 25 years.